This is the day we have been given, and let us be glad by rising and singing, enter, rejoice, and come in. Put down your hymnals, and let's just join in.
Enter, rejoice. Here we go. And enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice. Turn to your friend with a smile. Turn to your friend with a smile. Go ahead, good. Turn to your friend with a smile. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice. Yes, it is a blessing smile.
That feels good. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Reverend Abhi Janamanchi. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm one of the ministers here.
I'm Jessica Sawyer. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the worship associate today. On behalf of the entire congregation, we welcome you to our worship service this morning.
Our words of welcome are filled with our deepest aspirations and call us all to embody beloved community as we say together, you are welcome here.
Whether you are joining us for the first time or you've been a member since our founding in 1951,
you are welcome here.
Whoever you are and whoever you love,
you are welcome here.
Whatever your gender identity and expression, beliefs, or immigration status,
you are welcome here.
However you arrived at this beloved place, in person or online,
you are welcome here. If you're joining us for the first time today and feel comfortable doing so, please raise your hand so our greeters may offer you a welcome gift. That also includes a brochure about Cedar Lane. In that brochure is an information sheet that you are welcome to fill and share with us. And we are so glad you chose to worship with us this morning. Let us now offer our guests a warm Cedar Lane welcome. I would now like to draw your attention to the announcements page that you may have picked up on your way in. That includes a snapshot of the many wonderful things happening this week and in upcoming weeks. I have a couple of highlights, one being a Common Read discussion group for this year's Common Read. Each year, the Unitarian Universalist Association recommends a book that our congregations are encouraged to study together. And this year, the book is An Indigenous People's History of the United States, an incredible book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, whether or not you're going to participate in the Common Read, which we hope you will, which, by the way, will begin on March 26th and go through April 24th. Am I right, Kathleen? April 9th. Okay, that's Serves me right for my not wearing glasses. Anyway, so if you're interested, please see Kathleen Reedy after the service. She will be in the lounge. And for a special announcement about an upcoming awesome concert on March 15th, let's welcome our Director of Music, Dr. Henry Segrishi.
Thank you, Abhi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your joyous entering song there. Some of you may remember that a few years ago, during our concert series, we presented something called Ruah, which was a celebration of the Spirit. In those concerts, we endeavored to bring disparate musicians who had never met each other together and have them basically make music on the spot. Such is the case that we're going to present next Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. with a group called Dang Xi, duet of Tom Teasley, the percussionist, whom has been here to support Abhi's spirit experiences before with his amazing array of percussion instruments, and a young woman from China who is a Strathmore young artist named Chao Qian, and her specialty is the Chinese dulcimer. So they put these two instruments together and they've come up with a duet experience that is just marvelous. You're going to see a snippet of it at the end of today's service, about 2 minutes of them doing their thing. And when I asked him what the title of the work would be, he said, we've never titled anything because it's all spontaneous. So he said, how about calling it Dialogue? So that's what you're going to hear. Concert's free. I encourage you all to come. There are flyers and the poster in the lounge, and you know the deal. Take one, take it to your friend, bring your friends. So we have a great outpouring for the 4 o'clock concert next Sunday afternoon. Dang Xi. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
Our pastoral visitor today is Betsy Binks. She will be available during and after the service to support you if you have a joy or a sorrow on your heart.
And before we greet one another, I just wanted to share a little bit about how we at Cedar Lane are responding to the growing concern and threat of the novel coronavirus situation. We've been checking local, state, and national centers of public health to monitor the situation and keep ourselves updated, and taking precautions about how we should be in community together. Our facility staff, for example, are increasing their daily frequency of cleaning bathrooms and common surfaces, such as door handles, banisters, counters, and tables. And hygiene protocols in our religious education and our sanctuary programs have been increased. And if we get to the point where we may need to suspend services and our religious education program, we are looking into how we can make them available via live stream and or podcasts. And of course, we will share more of this if it becomes necessary. I also would like to urge all of us to be alert to the demonizing of our neighbors of Asian heritage or immigrants that can and is taking place in our county. The virus is in no way racially or culturally specific. And immigrants are no more likely to be infected than the native born, and it doesn't matter where you're from and what your beliefs are and what your political affiliation is, as we heard recently, that it does not discriminate. So our commitment to the beloved community calls us to be vigilant to prejudice around and among us, because we are a religious tradition that draws wisdom and inspiration from many sources that can help us to be more accepting, resilient, hopeful, connected, and careful as we need to be in facing the challenges that are upon us. There are lessons here for us to invite us to reflect on the deeper meanings of what it means to be in community together, to be safe, to be caring, to be connected, and to grow gently into acceptance and deepen loving kindness for ourselves and others, and also figure out ways in how we can be more present and face our fears together. So, with that little homily, to help protect the well-being of this, our gathered community this morning, I'd like to encourage everyone to greet one another in low contact or non-physical ways. So, with an elbow bump, or pressing your palms together and bowing slightly and say namaste if you feel comfortable doing so, or if you are a Trekkie, live long and prosper. That is a very appropriate greeting, actually. So, let us now turn and greet our neighbors. I forgot to welcome you. I'll do that later. Good morning, Howard. Good morning, Kathleen. Welcome. Good morning, Suzanne.
Thank you. We gather here to worship, to seek the truth, to grow in love, to join in service, to celebrate life's beauty, and to find healing for its pain, to honor our kinship with each other and with the earth, and to create a more compassionate world, beginning with ourselves, to wonder at the mystery that gave us birth, and to find courage for the journey's end, and to listen for the wisdom that guides us in the quietness of this moment. As Shira Ehrlich comes forward to kindle the chalice, symbol of our faith and our gathered community, please rise in body or in spirit to share in unison the chalice lighting words on the screen. With humility and courage born of our history, we are called as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community where all are welcome as blessings and the human family lives whole and reconciled. With this vision in our hearts and minds, we light our chalice. Please be seated.
Welcome back to Cedar Lane, my dear friend and colleague, the Reverend Dr. Kristen Harper, who you may remember preached, I think, last Mother's Day. Yeah. That's right. And Kristen and I went to seminary together, started out at Meadville-Lombard Theological School in Chicago, and we have been at it ever since, toiling through the vineyards of congregational ministry. And still standing. Kristen is a dear friend, a wonderful teacher, and a mentor, and a spiritual companion on life's journey and in ministry. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you. I'm going to share a story called Soul Bird by Michael Snoot. Deep down inside our bodies is the soul. No one has ever seen it, but many sense it is there. Inside the soul, right in the middle, is a bluebird standing on one foot. Something that's hard for me to do. This is the soul bird. The soul bird is our essence. It feels everything we feel. If we're hurting, the soul bird feels pain. If we're feeling love, the soul bird hops and skips. If we're afraid, the soul bird curls up and silently waits or stands at the gate fiercely. The soul sparks to life before we're born and never leaves us, not even for a moment, as long as we are alive. It's like the air we breathe. Do you know what the soul is made of? According to this story, drawers. Thousands of tiny drawers that can't be opened just like that, because each is locked with a special key only the soul bird can open. How? The bluebird stands on one foot with the other one tucked under its wing. It turns the key with a combination of claw and chant. Kumbaya, kumbaya. And the drawer opens and lets everything fall out. There's a drawer for everything in life. A drawer for being happy and one for being sad. A patience drawer, a contentment drawer, a drawer of hope, hopelessness, compassion. There's a traveling drawer and a stay put where you are drawer. A lazy drawer and a dream drawer, and one for, well, everything you can imagine. Whoever you are, whatever your life experience, there are drawers for all of it. Sometimes you can ask the bluebird to open a drawer and it will. And then sometimes the bird will choose one for you. Sometimes you want to be silent, but the soul bird opens the talking drawer and words come spilling out. Sometimes you want to talk, but the soul bird opens the silent drawer, and the soul bird does not always do what it's told, and things can get a little messy because the soul bird is wild and free. The soul bird wants to sing to us. It wants to tell us about ourselves and our feelings. Some of us hear it all the time. Some of us never. Some of us hear it only once our whole lives. But with practice, we can learn to influence the soul bird. If we concentrate and breathe deeply and slowly, if we learn to hear the chant of the soul bird, kumbaya, and we sing back the chant, kumbaya, we can connect to our inner soul space and being and learn to just flow with what comes out. Deep down inside of us is the soul, and in the middle of that, there is a bluebird standing on one foot. Many of us sense it's there and can hear it calling to us. Kumbaya, 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 kumbaya.
And or in spirit to sing Spirit of Life. Words are on screen. Inviting our mind, body, and spirit into this space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the Holy, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. I invite you to get comfortable in your seat, settling in, settling down. Place your feet on the floor if you can reach it. And close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And go deeper within to that place of silence and honesty, compassion, and caring. And as you settle into that space, let us take a deep breath together. Breathe in, hold it for a few moments, and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. As we breathe in and out, let us set aside the tensions and anxieties, the stresses and demands, both of our daily lives and all that surrounds us. Let us set them aside, loosening that garment of busyness and stress. And for this time, be with ourselves and each other. We gather each week, not for our needs alone, but to bear witness to our joys and our triumphs, our sorrows and our disappointments, as we travel together as companions on life's journey. In this circle of caring that we co-create, our hearts are with those whose primary spiritual practice is parenting. We hold in our hearts those who are mourning a loss, those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions. We hold in our hearts those who are survivors and those who are surviving. Within our Cedar Lane community, we hold in our hearts Francis Dearman, who was hospitalized last week after suffering a fall. And we hold in our hearts the names of those that we carry, those in our lives, loved ones, friends, neighbors, co-workers. I invite you, if you feel moved, to lift up their names into this silence. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to all those whose lives are lost or impacted by calamities and violence in our world. Especially this week, we mourn the loss of 27 lives in an attack on a political rally in Kabul, Afghanistan on Friday, and the 38 people who were killed in riots in Delhi, with Hindu nationalists targeting Muslims in the last couple of weeks. Our thoughts are with the people of Tennessee who are recovering from a devastating tornado last week that killed 24 people and destroyed homes and businesses across 4 counties. And we continue to hold in our hearts all those around the world and in the U.S. who are dealing with the coronavirus outbreak that has now infected more than 100,000 people globally and claimed over 3,000 lives. For these friends of ours and for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts, let us now turn to the peace and solace of prayer and silence.
Spirit of life, love force, life source, unknowable, known by many names, we gather our hearts together to share our healing compassion with those who are hurting, in body or in spirit, those who are afraid, those who are struggling, those who are ill, those who are on the path to recovery. Knowing that the journey to health can be long and challenging, we commit ourselves to being companions, to accompany one another in whatever way we can. Grateful for this community of memory and hope, we acknowledge those who have been present for us and ask forgiveness for those we could not be present for, of those we have failed, those we have disappointed. Determined to create the beloved community here, we open ourselves to all that is our lives together. As we enter into the silence together, those who are grieving a loss or commemorating an anniversary of a loss are invited to rise in body or spirit in mourning and memory. Blessed be.
Well, Cedar Lane came along in my life when I really needed it most. I had really lost a little hope and faith, and being a part of this faith community now has really helped me understand better what social justice, equity, and compassion for groups of people that I just was not very close to. And so I'm grateful that this community exists and that I have a chance to be a part of it and to contribute and to serve.
We looked online and ended up coming here, and the first service, Abhi just completely spoke to me. It was so brilliant and articulate, and the music was fabulous. The music was so different. It wasn't the same old traditional stuff. The music director played a djembe the first time, and I thought, oh my gosh, this speaks to me. And so, you know, I haven't been as active as Bob has because I was kind of burnt out from the last church, but I am fed here when I come, and I'm fed by the people and the beliefs, so it's been great.
Thank you, Bob and Ginger, for that beautiful testimonial about what it means to be a part of Cedar Lane, and for all that you give and share to make this a beloved community. Thank you.
A well-worn dollar bill and a similarly distressed $20 bill arrived at the Federal Reserve Bank to be retired. As they moved along the conveyor belt to be burned, they struck up a conversation. The $20 bill reminisced about its travels all over the country. "I've had a pretty good life," the 20 proclaimed. "Well, I've been to Las Vegas, Atlantic City, the finest restaurants in D.C., performance on Broadway, and even a cruise to the Caribbean." "Wow," said the $1 bill. "You've had a really exciting life." "So tell me," says the 20, "where have you been in your lifetime?" The $1 bill replies, "Oh, I've been to the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, the Lutheran Church." The $20 bill interrupts, "What's a church?" So that none of our bills have to ask the same question, the morning offering will be greatly received.
Now, here at Cedar Lane, the $20 bill does know its way around, so the offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Cedar Lane is grateful for you and for your gifts, gifts of time and service, gifts of beautiful music, financial gifts, that help us maintain our community and help others. So, thank you.
Our responsive reading this morning is adapted from the words of our Universalist foremother, the Reverend Olympia Brown, who was the first woman to be ordained by an American Christian denomination in the 19th century. Reverend Brown was also an early advocate for women's rights and one of the few first-generation suffragists who were able to vote with the passage of the 19th Amendment. So as we celebrate and mark Women's Heritage and History Month, and on this day, International Women's Day, I invite us to read responsively the words in bold that are up on screen. Be committed to this faith, work for it, sacrifice for it.
There is nothing in all the world so important as to be loyal to this faith, which has placed before us the loftiest of ideals,
which has comforted us in sorrow, strengthened us for noble duty, and made the world beautiful.
Do not demand immediate results, but rejoice that we are worthy to be entrusted with this great message.
That you are strong enough to work for great truth principles without counting the cost.
Go on finding ever new applications of these truths, and you will join in their contemplation, always trusting in the one God, whichever lives and loves.
In every house I will enter for good. In every field I will do only good. By every river I will turn my hand toward good. This is a promise I will keep. This is a promise I will keep. This is a promise I
January 15th, on the birth date of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I listened to or read his I Have a Dream speech. I do this to be reminded of where we were, to reflect upon where we are now, and to weigh how far we have to go. I do this to be inspired to keep on working towards the greater love he envisioned. This year, while exploring King's speeches, I came across an address Dr. King gave at the national headquarters of the Church of God in Christ on behalf of the striking sanitation workers. He ends the speech by saying, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it doesn't matter for me now because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anyone, I would like to have lived a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." And the next day, he was murdered. These lines always cause me to wonder in awe about King's commitment. His commitment to God, his commitment to we as a people, his commitment to, as the Unitarian minister, the Reverend Theodore Parker said, bending the arc of the universe towards justice. There's a story that Abhi told me about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King that I understand he shared with you many times. And it's about a man who wants to get involved in civil rights movement. And the man asked Dr. King how he can get involved. And Dr. King says, "Are you committed?" The man says, "Well, I want to get involved." Dr. King replies, "I hear you want to get involved, but are you committed?" Confused, the man replies, "Yes, I'm committed. I want to get involved." And Dr. King asked the man, "Have you heard the story about the bacon and egg breakfast?" "No," the man said. "Well," says Dr. King, "the chicken was involved, but the pig was committed." Is there anything in your life that you are so committed to, that you are willing to sacrifice for it, even die for it? Beyond your children, your spouse, your partner, your family, would you give your life for your friends, for a neighbor, for a community member, or a stranger even? I remember seeing a story in Reader's Digest as a teenager that challenged my naive conviction that I would not have cooperated with the Nazis. It was about a woman who was not Jewish, but witnessed her neighbor being taken away to the trains that brought the Jews to the concentration camps. She brought her neighbor 2 hard-boiled eggs to bring with her and was spotted by an SS officer who arrested the woman and put her on the train with her neighbor, and she ended up dying in Auschwitz. She, unlike Dr. King, did not know her generosity would lead to her death. But like King, she let her compassion, her ideals, her soul bird lead her. While exploring the word commitment, I discovered 2 very different definitions. One says that commitment is about pledging or promising to dedicate ourselves to a cause, an activity, a willingness to give our time, energy, and financial resources to something in which we believe. Another definition describes commitment as something that restricts our freedom of action. Like when my Catholic classmates informed me they could not come to the Unitarian Universalist Church because their priest had said that we were ungodly and it would be a sin. Or when one is committed to an institution, a prison, a detention center. But it also applies to a deep commitment to our ideals. When we are committed to something, truly committed, we may restrict ourselves from doing everything we want for the sake of living into our principles. Involvement versus commitment. Think about it. Many Unitarian Universalists are involved in climate justice. We show up, we raise our banners, we recycle and compost, we avoid single-use plastic straws, bottles, and bags, and bring our multi-use sacks with us to the grocery store. We are involved in climate justice. And yet, being committed goes beyond driving a Prius, although that helps. It means perhaps not driving, not flying. Those people from the West Coast who walked across the country to the New York climate justice rallies, they were committed. The people who write their representatives regularly and show up at their offices to urge them to vote to lower our reliance on fossil fuels, to stop us from fracking and digging up land for more oil and coal, to put more money and focus on renewable energy. Those people that eat lower on the food chain and never forget their water bottles and glass straws, who have solar panels and rainwater collection barrels, who educate the community on the climate crisis, these people are committed. Be committed to this faith. Work for it. Sacrifice for it. I would guess most of you have not heard such words in a Unitarian Universalist church before. How can we make a commitment to a faith that embraces diversity and honors individual truth and belief? How can we expect commitment when we don't promise salvation or threaten damnation? How can we expect commitment to a faith where the minister says it's okay if we worship St. Mattress on some Sunday mornings instead of coming to church? And to what am I asking you to commit? The Reverend Olympia Brown wrote, "There is nothing in all the world so important as to be loyal to this faith which has placed before us the loftiest of ideals." And what are these lofty ideals? As hopefully most of you know, as Unitarian Universalists, we are brought together not by adherence to a creed, but by covenant. The promises we make to one another to promote and affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Can you commit yourselves to these ideals? Can you go all in? Each week, many Unitarian Universalist congregations announce some version of "We welcome all," regardless of race, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, and religious background. But commitment to this faith asks us to go beyond simple words of welcome. It asks us to look deeply into the eyes of those with whom we disagree, those we say we find repugnant, those we see as our enemies, and honor their inherent worth and dignity, to see the divine radiating through their bodies. Being committed to this ideal looks like reaching out beyond those that we know to those people on the margins and bringing them into the center. It looks like valuing the lives of people who are poor and disabled, who are black, brown, whose gender identity is unknown or confusing to you, who are in prison, who are hungry, who are on welfare. Being committed to this ideal means providing an example for your children and grandchildren of radical welcome, of radical acceptance, radical justice. It looks like not spending too much energy trying to convince a conservative that you are right and they are wrong, but spending time on affirming a mutual fear, the mutual desire for a healthier, safer society. The hope that the future will be better for our grandchildren, that there will be a future for our great-grandchildren. Can you commit to honoring the inherent worth and dignity of every person? Representative John Lewis, who has dedicated his life to Dr. King's unfinished dreams, said, "All our work, all our struggle, all our days add up to one purpose: to reconcile ourselves to the truth and finally accept and that for once and for all, that we are one people, one family, the human family, that we are all emanations of one divine source, and that source is love." And how do we demonstrate this love? With justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, in his book Strangers on a Bus, shares this story. A light snow was falling and the streets were crowded with people. It was Munich in Nazi Germany, and Susie, a German Jew, had been riding the city bus home from work when an SS stormtroopers suddenly stopped the coach and began examining the identification papers of the passengers. Most were annoyed, but a few were terrified. Jews began to be told to leave the bus and go into a truck around the corner. Susie watched from her seat in the rear as the soldiers systematically worked their way down her aisle. She began to tremble. Tears streamed down her face. When the man next to her noticed she was crying, he politely asked her, "Why?" "I don't have the papers you have. I am a Jew. They're going to take me." The man exploded with disgust. He began to curse and scream at her. "You stupid idiot," he roared. "I can't stand being near you." The SS men asked what all the yelling was about. "Damn her," the man shouted angrily. "My wife has forgotten her papers again. I am so fed up. She always does this." The soldiers laughed and moved on. Susie never saw him again. She never knew his name. The stranger's commitment to justice, equity, and compassion in his relationships with humanity is the commitment to which I am referring. It is the commitment to this faith that I'm offering you. In the climate emergency in which we find ourselves, it's easy to see how our reliance on fossil fuels has led to the carbon emissions, which has led to the rise in temperatures, which have led to fires in California, Oklahoma, Australia. The dramatic changes in our biosphere, which have led to the endangerment and death of many species of plants, animals, and insects, which will in turn eventually lead to a drastic reduction in our food production, which will lead to higher prices and more food insecure and starving families. Are you committed to promoting and affirming the interdependent web of all existence, of which you are a part? When I first arrived at the church I serve in Barnstable, Massachusetts, during the welcome, I decided to include an invitation for guests to join their individual spiritual journeys with our own. You see, I did this in recognition that while we may hold different beliefs, it is in community that a larger truth is often found, that healing, hope, personal answers are discovered. One of the lofty ideals to which we covenant when we become Unitarian Universalists is that we will encourage and support one another's spiritual growth, that we will support us listening to our soul birds. Now, some of you do this already through gatherings in small groups, attending to one another's struggles, journeys, discoveries, and aha moments. Some of you do this by challenging others to go deeper, to connect what we say we believe in a situation to the situation in which we find ourselves, to sit with uncertainty, the doubt, the life with or without a higher power. Others do this through teaching creative arts, through walks in nature, through science. How do you commit to encouraging your fellow congregants to grow spiritually, to discover the connections that feed you, hold you, keep you grounded, and move you forward? I love the story of the soul bird because it reminds me from where our commitment comes. It is not up here. It is here and here. It stretches the connections we need to our inner selves, to our feelings, to our hopes and dreams, to our highest ideals. Right now, our world is coming at us faster than most of us can handle. There's so many injustices that our communities face. There's so much fear and divisiveness. As we race from school to soccer games to dance to music lessons to dinner to church to book groups to rallies to meetings, we can find ourselves ungrounded, disconnected, floating without a tether. If we are moving through our lives disconnected, it is hard to hear what our soul bird is saying. It is hard to be committed to anything. This is when we need our faith the most. This is when we need to go all in. Cedar Lane is not just any Unitarian Universalist church. It is your Unitarian Universalist Church. It is the place that you come for sanctuary, for challenge, the place you can bring your hurting and broken selves, your fears and frustrations, your hopes and dreams for a better life, a better world, and join with others who want the same. It is a place where the Reverend Dr. John Wolfe wrote, "Children come without being saddled with guilt or terrified of some celestial peeping Tom, where they can learn that religion is for joy, for comfort, for gratitude and love. It's a place where walls between people are torn down, not built up." Cedar Lane is worthy of your commitment, your sacrifice, your financial resources, your service. Be committed to this faith, wrote Olympia Brown. Work for it. Sacrifice for it. There is nothing in all the world so important as to be loyal to this faith which has placed before us the loftiest ideals. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me in the closing hymn, number 298, "Wake Now My Senses," in your gray hymnal.
Thank you.
Commitment takes intention and attention. It takes connection to our inner selves and listening to the songs of our soul bird. It takes never forgetting that while the world may tell you differently, you are not alone.
Go in peace. Go making peace, living gently, loving mightily, hand-washing thoroughly, and bowing to the mystery. Please be seated for the postlude.